Hello everybody, welcome back to Darkstorm Rising once more. Really great to see you back, and if you've managed to get through all of the episodes so far to get to this one, congratulations. But it's really exciting because once we've done today's video, we're actually laying paint on the miniature, so really looking forward to that, and I'm going to see if I can't get onto that one tomorrow so there won't be too big a delay before we're actually seeing the colours coming out on the miniature. Today we're going to do woodwork, not with chisels. We're actually going to paint some of the sticks that I've actually put on the base and actually turn those into miniature forestry, desperately trying to avoid using the word log once more. So I suppose we ought to really get over to the table and get some paint on the miniature. To the table! So here we have him, our brute of a monster. One of the three Carnifexes that I'm currently painting. Really pleased with him. He's one of the more normal Carnifexes, although we do have the stolen Tervagon head and the stolen claw from the Haruspex, slightly more oversized than the standard. Just gives him a bit more of an imposing look. Really happy with his stance, looked really aggressive and empowered. So let's crack on with painting the infamous Tyrannid log. There we go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to operate here with an open palette. So that means I've not planned anything. What I've done is I've literally grabbed this lot and said that's my palette. I might even add to it yet. So what we'll do is we've gone for browns, there's a few orangey tones, a few yellowy tones, there's even a bit of white in there. And what we'll do is we'll build the colours up and see what suits this piece of wood, this log. So first of all, I'm going to go for, all of the paints today are Vallejo. We're going to go for German black brown as our base coat. So I'm literally just going to paint the whole of that in German black brown and leave it to dry. It will take a little while, so I'll just come back when it's done. I did start with a technique actually, so rather than just paint this and come back to it, I've actually changed my mind. And rather than edit it out, I thought I'd show you the process. So what I'm doing is I'm setting, if you like, the tone. So what I'm doing is I'm painting the bark around in the circular motion that it would grow on the tree to set like a tone. And I'm also not covering all of the black up. I'm leaving essences of it behind and just painting little stripes across the black. And as we build up the layers with other colours, that will just help set the colour scheme. It won't detract from it. So we'll just get a little bit more paint on our brush and we'll do the other side. Just little stripes. And I deliberately left some of the paint previously because I thought it would help it blend into the background. And I might, you see where this green area is on the stone, where that moss might spread onto the bark here, I'm actually going to paint that back in later. And we'll be using one of our favourite colours again. Or at least one of mine anyway. Okay, and actually that looks fairly dry as well. So actually we'll go straight on to the next colour. And I think we're actually going to come through a couple of colour tones and actually come brighter straight away, and we're going to go to orange brown, and then what we'll do is reset over the top of that with a darker colour. So we'll just grab this first. I haven't cleaned my brush, so some of the German black brown will be on the brush still. That's a deliberate thing. Just blends the colours in together. Sets a better tone on the actual miniature. And we'll carry on with, this time it's a little bit more stipply, a little bit more accurate where the placement is. And then stripes as well. So a little bit of stippling. A little bit of stripe work going on, trying to catch some of the natural woodwork on this stick, which is now our fallen tree trunk. And I'm not catching too much of the underside, and I'm letting it naturally set a shadow for us. Because in the grim darkness of the far future, there are only shadows. There is only grim dark. I do actually think that maybe as another job I could maybe look at maybe getting into contortionism. Some of the angles that I'm having to paint at to actually get this miniature into view for you. Actually, I think it could be a second job. Leaving the gap here for that green mossy colour that we were talking about a moment ago. And then just make sure that we have caught the underside here. Not too heavy with the paint. A bit more towards the edges here where the light would catch a little bit more. And also because we did mix the German black brown in, actually when we're doing those shadow tones, if I clean my brush now and then go to the pure orange brown and bring that over here out of the way, and then again do some little stripes, more on the higher tones, some of it's a little bit stipply. And just catch a little bit down the side. Okay. Just wiping off a little bit of the excess so the brush doesn't get too heavy with paint. Combination of stippling and striping all the way around, just maintaining the continuity of the colour all the way across the wood tone. Right, and then what we're going to do is change colour tone again. So that was the orange brown, and now we're going to get in a bit of filthy brown. So although it's all Vallejo, we're going for a few different ranges in the colour. And again, we're coming a brighter shade, and this will be aimed, mix a bit of that in with our previous colour. So all we do is we just keep blending them, so it just, because we keep mixing the colours, it takes a little bit of the old and the new, and it just gives us that continuity into the miniature. And now we're just going to concentrate just a little bit more where the light would catch. bit more stipply in our nature of our application. Catching the edges there. Just striking across those highlights. Just gently tapping the paint onto the edges just so we don't leave the shadows too dark. And now we're going for the pure filthy brown. Just catch the very highlights here. Now, if you've ever seen wood in the forest, it doesn't just stay just as wood. You get all sorts of lichens and mosses growing on it. So now we need to give that a little bit of a blend in. And surprisingly, grey is a colour we're going to use. Okay, so I'm going to go grab my Vallejo US dark green. I really do like this colour. It's a lovely dark colour for painting mosses, especially on stones and trees. So we'll put some on the palette, and if you remember, we had a little bit on the stonework, and what I'm going to do is try and blend it across onto the tree to make it, just like in real life, make it look like some of the moss has crossed over and is now growing onto the tree. So we'll just a little bit of stippling type effect. I've actually, on the basing, some of the sand that we used for the basing is actually on the side of the tree here, and it just gives it that look of lichen growing there. And again, on the underside of this part of the branch, what we'll do is, again, we'll have a little bit of lichen, a little bit of moss growing under there, and it just, rather than the tree just being that tree log colour and being an item there, it blends it into the scenery around it rather than it just looking sat on its own. So we'll get some of this Vallejo yellow green, which I tend to use as a highlight colour for things like lichen. And again, what we'll do is we'll just stipple it on the top, and we'll apply it in just sorry, the view's a little bit hard to get to, but just stippling effect on the lichen there. I'll try and give you a better view, and it's just like literally just dabbing it on here, and you can see, yeah, it's coming along quite nicely, and then just spread it out onto the surrounding terrain and just sort of pull the colours together. And then on the underside here, where we've already placed a little bit of dark green, just a few dabs of the light green just to emphasise where the lichen's growing. Okay, that's looking quite nice now. Yeah. And just bring a bit through onto the end of the branch here, just to try and, again, carry it on through the environment and pull it all together. Okay. So now we're going to get a little bit of the Vallejo Ice Yellow, And this is really now to, well, that's a little bit watery. But now we're going to go for a real high tone. That's better. We're going to go for a real high tone now on the branch itself, and imagine like where the sun is coming down and striking an edge and giving us like a line, if you like, across the branch of highlight. So that's what we're going to try and create. So I'll just pop on the first couple of dots here and there, and then just slowly work my way across, just stipple effect, and just bringing it across the branch, just like tiny little stripes. All we've doing, all the same technique we've been employing all the way along. Little stripes, little bits of stippling, but now being more focused on the higher surface areas where the light would naturally catch. The little tiny dots of colour. And although it doesn't look a great deal, it makes a big impact on the final finished product. There we go, that's looking loads better. So now what we'll do is we'll actually blend those colours in together and give it a bit more of a woody look, and we'll use some Vallejo wood grain. This is more of a wash, and you'll see when I put it on the palette it's quite thin, but we'll add water to the brush and then lick the brush dry, so that there is some moisture in the brush and it just helps it apply better, so it's not such a heavy wash. And you'll see it's a nice rich tree brown colour, and we'll just give it a light coat at the edges and into the shadows, and that's sort of going down into the shadows there. I'll try and give you a better view, and then just stripes of the colour at the edges down into the shadows. Nice quick job. So now you can see, as a finished job, it looks a lot more natural in earth tones. But now what we've got to do is we've got to reset the highlights where we just overran a little bit, but it's important that you overrun so that the blend of the colours occurs. So as I go now and do the highlights, you'll notice that on the upper surfaces, there is some of the darker, the richer the colour from that wood grain. And you can see it here, especially to the right, and we'll just slowly work our way going over them and reintroducing the highlights. And all we're doing is we're applying our orange brown with a little bit of the filthy brown mixed in. There we go. Just brings it all back together. And at the edges you can see those little bits of brown just a bit too high, just touching them back in. And then we go for the highlights, the high highlights. And that's where we've got a little bit of the ice yellow mixed in. And we'll bring a bit of everything together just to get these final highlights. Okay, so what we now need to do is, you see where the lichen bits are, we're going to introduce some Vallejo light grey. We'll mix it with a little bit of black first on the palette. And just bring it to a tone that I think is going to sort of be a darker grey, but I don't want it to go too dark. So what we're going to do is try and give a little bit of a look of a change of the lichen on the logs. If you look in a real forest, you'll see that the different lichens growing on there sort of blend together. And grey seems a real bizarre colour to go for, but once we actually get this finished, you'll think, oh, that works. And when you look at the real trees themselves, it really does. And then we'll go for the pale grey, and we'll just put tiny dots on Again, where, if you remember where you put the highlights for the edge of the tree for the sunshine, these highlights are going exactly the same place, to reinforce that continuity in the lighting on the branch itself. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take a mix of our good old US Army dark green and the yellow and green, and we're going to introduce that on the top of the grey, but in slightly smaller, tinier dots, and it will blend the previous moss and lichen in together with what we've already got, and it'll give us a nice mix of the two tones. Now we're going to move on to the ends of the branches, and where trees snap you tend to find it's a much brighter colour, so we're going to go straight in with the filthy brown, and go for quite a bright pale colour to start with, that snapped broken branch type of a look, and we're going to work through to quite pale tones here, so it does give us a very strong contrast to the darker colours of the branch itself. So just gently applying that all the way to all the ends of the branches. And now we're going to go back around the miniature, and this time we're going to go back around with a bit of the pale yellow mixed in, so that we create a really nice highlight. So now we're going back in with a mixture of the filthy brown with a heavy dose of the ice white, and we also add in here a little bit of Vallejo's bone white, so that it's a real pale highlight. So the edges of the branch do look very bleached, and if you add, just go get a branch and go snap it, and you'll see that the inner part of the branch is that very pale. So that's the end of the branches, and now for a little bit of extra. If this is Vallejo's aluminium or dark aluminium, which is it's meant for airbrushes, so it's very easy to apply. It's very liquid, and as you touch it on these elements of barbed wire, you'll see that it just literally just runs straight onto them, gives you perfect coverage. So excellent colour, highly recommended. One of my favourite paints, this, for its application. So I'll just put a coat all over. We're leaving the very bases, the earth tones that are already painted on them. We want it to make it look like the razor wire's buried in the ground and it's erupting. But what we'll do is we'll grab another one of my favourite products in a second. So now we move on to Dirty Down's rust finish, and we're going to apply a liberal coat to the barbed wire. And if you can try and make sure that the application isn't even, it needs to be heavy in some places, light in others, and the reason for that is that as it dries, it will give you different saturations and it'll look a more realistic barbed wire colour. And then the other thing that we're going to do is we're also going to put some of the rust onto the ground at the very bases of the barbed wire, so that it looks like the earth is actually, the rust has seeped into the earth. And you can see here where, as that dries, this stuff is amazing. The colour it goes is just wonderful. And once it dries, you'll see that it looks like the rust has seeped onto the ground and leached onto the ground, and it gives it a much more natural effect. And we'll also now cover up some of the work we've done, because as the environment gets splattered, so we'll go back to our lovely favourite US dark green, and we'll apply that on some of the barbed wire, around some of the bases, and it brings the background onto the foreground and blends the foreground into the background. And it's about that, keeping that continuity again with your miniature, so that it does look a more natural effect. So now we'll grab some Steel Legion Drab. This colour just gives you such a lovely earth tone, and what we're going to do is we're going to apply this over some of the ground and over some of the barbed wire, and again it's to integrate the two together and make them feel like they're all part of the same battlefield. Just splash a little bit up, just as the rain would be hitting the ground, it would splash some of the mud up onto the barbed wire, and also it just the infiltration of the two together just gives you that more natural look. And just a couple more dabs here and there. Oh, sorry, just disappeared a little bit out of shot there. But you can see it as we're applying all these different coats, it's just all blending nicely together. It just really looks very natural. Well, I'm really pleased with the effect. I think it looked really good on the base, blended in really nicely with everything that was going on. Hope you like the effect. Hope it's something that you think, oh yeah, I'll take that away and I'll use that myself. And encourage you to like expand your vocabulary when it comes to painting your miniatures. If you are enjoying this series, please do like and subscribe. It's really helping with the channel. And all I've got to say is, are we painting minis yet? And the answer is, hell yeah! And I will catch you in the next one, because we're actually going to get on with the miniature. Really excited.